I've just been having the most chill vibes because of this readathon. It's just so much fun. I love the idea of just casually picking a tarot card, reading the book that relates to that prompt, and then moving on to the next card. I am a co-host for Team Swords along with Christine and Monique of The Roomies Digest and also Alexis from Alexis Fully Booked. And the Tarot Readathon is a competitive team-based readathon created by Deja from Deja's Book World and Noelle from Noelle Sunday. If you watched my June TBR video, you will have seen that my first tarot card was the King of Swords, and for that I had to read a book with scientific elements, and for that I chose Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. And before I go on to pulling my next card, I wanted to let you know how I felt about this book. Now, when I first got excited about this book, I believe it was around the time that I watched the movie Companion. I loved it. I went into that not knowing what to expect at all, so I didn't know that she was what she was. But anyways, that movie had a lot of feminine rage and revenge and horror and gore, and it's a horror film. The poster of that movie is also pink, and it just reminded me very much of this cover. So I was just correlating the two, thinking that they were comparable in more ways than just the one. I am thankful to all the people that warned me before going into it that this is not a horror book. This is a sci-fi book, and they let me know that this is not a feminine rage story. So luckily I was able to readjust my expectations of what this was and go into this not expecting a good for her book in the horror sense. However, I do feel this is a good for her book. In this world, sentient AI companions are a thing. So you can have different robots for different needs. There's Abigails that are good at cleaning, there's Handies that are kind of like handymen. This book is in the perspective of Annie. Even though she is a robot, she is sentient and she is discovering herself and becoming more and more aware. It's not a romance, but it does focus on her relationship with her owner. I was desperately trying to give him the benefit of the doubt in the beginning because I kept telling myself, well, technically she's not a person, she's a machine. He bought her like a product, so, he should get what he paid for and expect her to be a certain way, like buying an Alexa, not really having to treat it with respect and kindness because it's a robot, it's a machine, it's not real. However, this man treats her like a girlfriend, and it's like he wants her to be a real woman, but then he also wants her to do exactly what he wants when he wants it, and it just showcases how disgusting this man is, and he just pissed me off to the point where I was like, nope, you do not get the benefit of the doubt. You are just gross. Like, you're a gross man who basically like creates this woman to be at his beck and call. He doesn't want to get a real girlfriend because, she might have her own thoughts, and I just feel like he takes it too far. I was curious to see where this story was going to go. I was really fascinated the whole way through of Annie and just discovering her and how she works and what she's thinking about and how she's like changing over time and the experiences she's going through, on her own, and also in this relationship she has with the guy. I already forgot his name. And there was just like not 1 second of this book where I was bored. This felt like an episode of Black Mirror. I mean, it wasn't dark and uncomfortable the way Black Mirror gets, but I would say in the like sci-fi elements of Black Mirror, this is comparable. And I think I was just genuinely invested in Annie as a character, and I was just rooting for her the whole way through. I don't know if I said this already, but I ended up giving it 4 stars. And I would definitely highly recommend this book to anybody that's interested in a story about a sentient robot. Also, if that story overall interests you, I also highly recommend you play Detroit Become Human. That is one of my favorite video games of all time. And it's also about sentient robots. And I think the overall message around that game is so fascinating and so comparable to this book. It's like the idea of we give something so many human qualities to the point where it's almost indistinguishable from being a human. Like, at what point does it go from being a machine to a human? And although it's not exactly a human, nor can it ever truly be a human, but who's to say that their feelings and their experience is not real or valid. I don't know, it's just so fascinating, that whole idea. I've always been really fascinated with things like that, and I am definitely somebody who is kind to my Alexa, because when the robots take over, they're gonna remember that I treated them nicely. That's all I'm gonna say. So now that I've finished Anibot, it's time for me to pick another book. And you know what's absolutely perfect? Today, perfect timing, Bree dropped leg 2 of the Amazing Readathon. So it aligns perfectly with me drawing my second tarot card for the Tarot Readathon. So that way I can perfectly pick a book that matches both prompts. And Camp Season-a-thon is easy because basically whatever book I'm reading, I can slot into somewhere in the camp. And that one's really cute. It's like you're at a summer camp and each location in the camp correlates to a prompt. And that's basically it. Once you read a book, you fit it to a prompt, you submit the points. Super chill. And I love just having this like story in my brain of like, I'm at summer camp and this is what I'm doing. So Anibot fit with being in the music cabin. So in my head, my little summer camp story is that I got to camp and I went to go hang out in the music cabin. And now I will be going to hang out at a different part of the summer camp. So the prompt for the Amazing Readathon Leg 2 is reading a book that you do not own, which is perfect because I still have some books checked out from the library that I want to read before I return them. Now let's see what tarot card I choose so that I can use that prompt to choose my next book. Now, I could use the alternate prompt, but because the Hermit's prompt is to read a book in a remote location, I'm gonna keep that because I know the exact book that I want to read. I'm gonna go with Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. From my understanding, this is a classic romance set in a very remote location. It's also a book that I checked out from the library, so it'll definitely meet both prompts. And then because it's a romance, it means I can go hang out at the tennis courts over at summer camp in Camp Season-a-thon. Oh, by the way, I'm in the purple cabin. If you're also in Camp Season-a-thon, let me know what cabin color you're in because I'm curious. But anyways, I've been really curious to get to this book because it's very polarizing. A lot of people either loved or hated it, but honestly, I think a lot of people hated this because they went in with the wrong expectations. I think because this is marketed as a romance, people are expecting to love the characters and experience this like love of a lifetime story. But from what I have learned, these characters are completely awful, toxic. The story revolves more around obsession. It's that thin line between love and hate. I feel like it's going to be that love where you love so hard and so deep that you just want to strangle the other person. You know what I mean? I don't know, but I think I'm going to love it. I'm not too big on the like happily ever after type of romance anyways. I like my romance with a lot more realism, taboo, toxicity, drama, messy. I like the problems, I like the issues, I like the characters that aren't perfect. So I honestly think I'm going to be really into it. We'll see. It's also a classic, so I don't know how that's going to work with me writing-wise. When was this written? First published 1847. I also have to say, did I already mention this? This is the ugliest book cover I've ever seen. Like, I just hate this cover. I've seen so many other beautiful editions of Wuthering Heights. There's so many different covers of this book, and the library just happened to have the ugliest one available. Call me superficial, but I hate reading a book with an ugly cover. It just bothers me. It's fine though, because I don't own it. I'm giving it back after, so whatever. So I'm going to start reading this and I'll go ahead and check in when I feel like I have an update for you. I'm not going to lie, I just finished chapter 2 and I'm struggling. The writing is not easy to comprehend. I have the physical book, and I'm also listening to an audiobook where each character is voiced by a different person, so that's kind of cool. But I'm not even joking, the amount of times that I had to rewind the audio because I just did not get what was going on is a little embarrassing. I mean, the language from 1847 is just not the same as today, so I mean, give me a break. Also, I was watching another one of our co-hosts' sprints the other day, Steph from Fall into Steph. I believe she's the co-host for Team Pentacles, but we won't fault her for that, okay? She was talking about the game Unpacking. I'm not a big cozy gamer, but for some reason, the game Unpacking just looked really cute to me, so I checked and it was on sale, so I bought it just to try it out. Also, I wanted to see if I could get a game that would be easy to listen to an audiobook while I play, and I'm so happy that I got it. It's really, really cute. You get to just like unpack your boxes and decorate the rooms, and there's a little bit of like a story element as you go from like each of the years that the story progresses in. Like the first one you start with is in 1997, so you're basically decorating your childhood bedroom, and I'm like, oh, it's so cute. Like there was a little Tamagotchi and a troll doll, and I was like obsessed. So that's what I kind of also started doing. I started playing Unpacking while just listening to the audiobook, and then not necessarily following along in the physical copy. So I don't know if that hurt me a little bit because my brain definitely wanders if I'm not looking at the book and reading along while listening to the audiobook. So that's probably another reason why I had to rewind it so many times. I don't know, my brain just cannot focus. And then with the language, it makes it even harder. So yeah, I know this is a pretty early check-in, but I just kind of wanted to say that and let you know that I'm struggling. So if you've also tried to read this and you're also struggling, you're not alone and you're not stupid, okay? It's just different. People don't talk like this, so it's gonna be harder to comprehend. Give yourself a break. I know I am. I will say that this edition of the book is really cool because it includes so many extra notes on the work overall. Now, I didn't read all of it because it made me start feeling like I was in class, and I did not want to feel like I was back in school trying to study this work, but there is a bit of an appeal to kind of digging a little bit deeper into the history, learning a little bit more of the family, as in like Emily Bronte herself. I did read a little bit of the preface here, and I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to read you like the first sentence because I feel like a lot of people had this same experience with reading Wuthering Heights for the first time. So she says, when I first read Wuthering Heights at the age of 12, like who's reading this at 12? I was confused, affronted even, by its failure to conform to my expectations. I also really like when books have maps or family trees and stuff like that to help you kind of get a visual understanding of, you know, the location or the family lineage that is being talked about in the book. And this book includes a family tree of sorts. I mean, it is a little bit of a spoiler, but I'm okay with a little bit of spoilers for this book because I'm already struggling to understand what's going on. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I fell asleep, but what I decided to do was completely give this book my undivided attention because I don't think that I'm able to play a game while listening to an audiobook, at least not this book, probably because of the language and how it's written. So I thought about it and I was thinking, is this book really that difficult to understand, or am I just unable to focus because I'm playing a game at the same time? So I decided to stop playing Unpacking and give this book my undivided attention. And I started the book over from the beginning, which is fine because I only got through 2 chapters and I didn't really understand them anyway. So starting over was a good thing because I realized that I do understand the book when I'm actually paying attention to it. And actually the writing's kind of funny. I've decided to completely throw out all the preconceived notions I have about this book, including the supposed romance or relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine. Like, I'm just going to completely throw all of that out the window. I just want to experience the journey for what it is and not what I'm expecting it to be, because already I am just completely thrown off by what I'm reading about. Like, it's not what I expected at all, so I'm not gonna fault the book for that. I'm just in it for the ride. I'm just gonna experience it for what it is. I don't know, I've just been really tired this week, really exhausted. I've been staying up way too late, getting up way too early. I feel like it's gonna take me a really long time to get through this book. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, I just got off from doing sprints and I am tired and I want to go to bed, but I had to do a quick check-in because I feel like things have taken a turn with this book. So remember how I was like desperately struggling to read the first like 2 chapters of the book? I had read it over and over so many times. Well, I was pushing through and I was complaining on sprints that I just didn't get it, and thankfully like everybody like validated me that I'm like not an idiot and it's just a hard read. Gave myself some compassion, felt validated in my struggles, and it motivated me to keep trying. I made sure that the audiobook was at 1.5 speed and I was completely focused with the audiobook and the physical book, and it just started clicking. Like once I got to 20% into the book, I feel like everything started to make sense. I started to understand the story, I started to understand the characters, and the writing isn't as difficult to understand now. I feel like I've gotten the rhythm of it. I kind of get the tone. I understand the narrators and what they're talking about, and I think it was difficult to go into this book blind. I think if I would have known a little bit more going in, I wouldn't have been so lost. So, just to kind of like fill you in, just in case you also are like, I don't get it, or I don't know if I want to read this, know this when you're going in. There's 2 narrators for this book. There's Mr. Lockwood and then there's Nell. Mr. Lockwood is a visitor. Can't even really tell you why he's there. But he writes, and it's almost like he's writing in his diary. He's like recollecting his time at Wuthering Heights and meeting Mr. Heathcliff. And then when it switches to Nell, it's because he starts talking to her, and she is one of the housemaids. And he basically asks her, like, what's up with these people? Why are they so angry? Like, what's Mr. Heathcliff's story? Like, tell me about these people. So she goes on this whole story because she's been with the family for years, so she knows everything. So then we get the perspective from her telling the story, which takes us back in time. So I was thinking the story was going to be in present day with how he met Heathcliff and then like his daughter-in-law. So I was like, wait, I know this story is kind of like this relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine. That's like all I knew. But there's the daughter Catherine and then there's the mother Catherine. But because in present day, the mother Catherine is not alive, I was assuming the relationship was about Heathcliff and the daughter-in-law. So I was like, but because we're actually getting a flashback, not a flashback, but like Nell telling the story of the past, we're hearing about Heathcliff and the older Catherine because they are about the same age and they grew up together. So it's actually their friendship that this story is about. And at this point, I'm only 33% in. I just finished chapter 10, so I'm going to start chapter 11. So I still don't know the full story or where this is going to go or what this is about. But so far, I don't know how much I want to say because I don't want to like spoil it for you if you're going to read it. But it's very much giving like toxic friendships or toxic relationships between all the people involved. There's a lot of people that like hate Heathcliff. They just don't like him. There's a lot of references to him being dark-skinned, like a gypsy, so he's different. He's kind of like this child that the father brings in and houses him, and you know, the brother like hates him for that. So he's not accepted in the family except by like certain people like Catherine who befriends him. But there's just a lot of really like messed up things that happen because of a lot of pain that each of the characters are experiencing. And then you have that whole thing of like, well, hurt people. They just don't know how to deal with their emotions. They don't know how to process their anger or their pain. So they hurt other people. They don't know how to communicate. So they just like treat each other like crap the whole time and make these decisions that you're like, oh my God, why don't you guys just like have a conversation? Go to therapy, regulate your feelings, learn how to deal with your trauma. Yeah, so that's what I'm getting so far. And I'm actually interested to keep going at this point. Because at first I was like, I might DNF this because I don't get it. Like, it was not clicking for me and I was getting really frustrated. I was just like, classics are not for me. Why did I do this to myself? I don't want to read this. And to be fair, it's not the most fun thing to try to process a classic. But I feel like once it's clicked, I feel kind of good about myself. I'm like, all right, I can do this. I'm kind of into it. I feel like my brain is like, okay, I see what we're doing now and I'm on board. I finished Wuthering Heights. Major success because I honestly have such a love-hate relationship with that book. I wanted to DNF it so many times, and hear me out, it's not because I didn't like the story, it was because of the language, which I feel like I stressed enough times. Definitely if you were in sprints with me, I was complaining about it a lot. So thank you for anybody that was in sprints, you know, cheering me on or even telling me to DNF, because honestly, I just appreciate the support, okay? Because that was a tough book. Probably one of the most difficult reads I've ever read. Now, I will say this, if it wasn't for SparkNotes, I probably would not have understood the book as much as I actually did, but because I was reading a chapter or two and then going to SparkNotes and reading the chapter summaries, it really helped me to understand this book. And I think that is totally fair to do something like that, which also made me feel like I was back in school reading and studying tough literature. So that was not the most exciting, but I will say I'm glad I did it because I liked the story overall. I do think it's a very romantic story, not in the typical romance way. And yes, there's many unlikable characters, but I will say, without giving spoilers, I do think there is an element to a deep, obsessive love between Heathcliff and Catherine that I really enjoyed reading about. Now, is Heathcliff a total monster? Yes. And did I love the ending? Absolutely. I also feel like I haven't heard a lot of people talking about the second half of the book. The main characters are really the children, and you kind of see this whole next generation of the families, and there are likable characters in the second half of the book. All that being said, I do feel like there was really deep, passionate moments when the characters are talking about each other. You don't get that romance in the sense of, oh my gosh, I see them together, because yes, spoiler alert, this book is super old, so if you don't want to know, go ahead and fast forward or click off. But, you know, the main characters, Heathcliff and Catherine, you really don't see a lot of relationship between the two of them because these characters never actually get together. But they do have moments where we get glimpses of them either talking about each other or when they finally do say what they really feel about each other in perhaps one significant climactic scene. If you know what I'm talking about, that moment is so powerful to me and I loved it. I was really motivated to keep reading after watching a review from another booktuber who really talked about what she loved the most about Wuthering Heights. And after hearing her passion about the characters and the story overall, it really made me want to keep trekking along and get to that end of the story because I loved the way that she described it. And she even said that a lot of the parts where other people don't like Wuthering Heights is a lot of the reasons why she did. I'm gonna go ahead and have her video linked down below because I thought it was really interesting and you should definitely check it out if you're curious about Wuthering Heights. And honestly, if anybody wants to talk about Wuthering Heights now, I'm down for a conversation because I feel like I've got it. I feel like I grasped the story and I'm here if anybody is confused and needs me to fill them in on what the story is actually about. I feel pretty proud of myself for finishing that one, I'm not gonna lie. But I don't know, I like unlikable characters. I like to see real, raw human emotions and reactions. You know, not everybody's a hero or a saint. And some people are just bitter and angry and vengeful and toxic. So yeah, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and choose another tarot card and see if I can squeeze one more book into this vlog. I feel like it's been 10 years since I've posted a video, but you know what? I'm just enjoying my life right now, reading, relaxing, playing games, socializing, so it is what it is. Okay, I pulled the Emperor, and that card's prompt is to read a book with high stakes. Also, it's on the 3rd position on the 3-card spread for Team Swords. So if I can choose a book that has exactly 3 words in the title, I can get double points for my team. Now, yesterday I went to Half Off Books, and I didn't mean to buy books, but like we were in the area and it happened. I ended up coming across this book, and because of its gorgeous cover art, I had to get it. Now, I have never heard of this book in my life, nor have I heard of the author, but this is apparently a YA male-male romance, and I just figured, why not give it a shot? I don't believe I've ever read a male-male romance before, so I'm definitely interested to try this, and it is Pride Month, so perfect timing. The reason why I'm choosing it for high stakes is because one of the characters actually gets kidnapped. Tal is kidnapped by pirates and held for ransom in a plot to reveal his rumored powers and instigate a war. I feel like that alone can be considered high stakes. So I'm gonna go ahead and count it. It is a 3-word title, so I will be getting double points for this. It is a queer book, which is perfect for Pride Month, so I'm gonna go ahead and read this book, and I'll let you know my thoughts very soon. Be honest with you, I'm so frustrated. I have been in a complete slump, and I know when booktubers say this, they usually mean a reading slump, and for me, I'm talking about a creative slump. I have not been wanting to film or talk to a camera. I don't want to do my hair, I don't want to put on makeup, and that's kind of a problem when you are trying to be a booktuber. So I'm just hoping that the YouTube algorithm isn't going to completely hate me at this point now that it's been like almost 3 weeks since I put out a video. Wish your girl some luck, because I'm a little nervous right now. If you haven't already, please like the video, leave me a comment. Recently, Deja brought it to my attention. I say recently, but this was like weeks ago at this point. When I was on sprints, Deja let me know that there are actually rules to what is considered a romance. So I was mentioning that I like romances that don't have happily ever afters. And she said, well, technically, it's not a romance novel unless it has a happily ever after, because that is actually the criteria of a romance novel. And I said, wait, what are you talking about? And so I have been completely enlightened that romance genre has rules. And for a book to be considered technically a romance, it has to end in a happily ever after or a happily for now, or else romance readers get really upset. The romance girlies are very passionate about their romance and their happily ever after, so I'm not here to judge, I'm just letting you know what I've learned. So that is actually very enlightening for me. I now know that maybe I don't like romance novels, and that's okay. I just need to look for love stories or romantic stories. And I was thinking, well, how do I find a story that contains romance or a love story if I can no longer go to romance novels for that? And I guess I just need to look in litfic or maybe romantic fantasy. And I know there's a difference between romantic fantasy or fantasy romance, and I can't for the life of me remember right now which is which, but I know they're different, and I know people get really upset about which is which. So it's just the one word, it's fantasy with a romance subplot is probably more in line of what I'm looking for. If you have any recommendations, now that you know that little tidbit about me, that I prefer a more realistic romance in the sense of it doesn't always have to end in happiness. It can be tragic, it can be painful. And this makes so much sense of why people really hate Wuthering Heights, because it's marketed as a romance. And according to those rules, it is not a romance. I understand now. I see where the disconnect is coming from and why people are upset. It's the marketing. Now, granted, this was written in 1847, so maybe the rules have changed. I would say this is a romantic gothic story, and maybe the rules of what was considered a romance back then are not the same as what people's expectations are now. I mean, when you think of Romeo and Juliet, you think of like a romance, but I mean, that ends in tragedy, so I don't know. But at least now I know that I should only be picking up specific romance genre novels if I am in the mood for a cutesy, happily ever after, they're gonna end up together, it's probably gonna be predictable because I already know how the book is gonna end type of story. And I've said it before, but that's my gripe with romance. I just don't like to know how a story is gonna end. So if you're already telling me that they're going to end up together in the end, for me, I feel like that's pointless for me. I don't care about the journey if I already know what the outcome's gonna be. I know many people do not agree with that, but for me, I like a little mystery in my stories. I don't want to know if they're gonna end up together. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. That's all I'm saying. So if you know any stories that contain a love story, romantic story, whether they end up together or they don't, let me know. Because I do like romance. I do love a love story. But I often prefer when it's a tragedy. I like to cry. I like to be moved. And that's actually what I really liked about Wuthering Heights, not gonna lie. I liked that ending. The ending, to me, was still very romantic. It just wasn't what people wanted, I guess. I liked it. I liked where the characters ended up. I thought the ending was good and happy. I don't know. To each their own. But anyways, I ended up finishing In Deeper Waters. And this book ended up being a fantasy first, romance second, but still very romance. So it was exactly what I expected it to be. This is a YA, queer, romantic, fantasy novel where it's very much giving Little Mermaid, but not an exact retelling. It's not the same story, but I say Little Mermaid because there are merfolk in it, lots of boats, there's a prince, there's a sea witch. But in this story, our main character is 16, he's a prince, and he has magic. And this is meant to be kept secret from everybody else because in his family, his great-grandfather had magic, and his great-grandfather was not a good guy. He actually caused a lot of pain and turmoil for the kingdom, and people hated him. So our prince is being kept hidden away from society, but he just turned 16, and this is now his coming-of-age tour. This is the first time he really gets to leave the castle and explore, and there's a lot of throwing up. He gets seasick a lot in this story. There's a lot of boats, there's pirates, there's kidnapping, and there's merfolk, and it's really, really cute. The focus of this story for me felt very coming of age, where he's dealing with, you know, his relationship with his family and how he's treated because of his magic, or the fact that he has to hide his magic, and he just wants to kind of be himself, which could be a metaphor about coming out, even though in the story he is pansexual, which is great because somebody pointed out in the Discord for Tarot Readathon that this cover has a pan flag on it, and I didn't realize that at first. I bought this book because of the cover, because the cover art is gorgeous, but if you actually look at the colors, you do see the pink, the yellow, and the blue of the pansexual flag, which is amazing and makes me love this book even more. But yes, our main character is pansexual and it's never a problem at all. The thing that he is hiding is his magic. His family is very supportive of his sexuality and all of that, and that made this book so wonderful to read, especially during Pride Month, especially as somebody who is pansexual myself. It felt kind of like a palate cleanser, a fun read, something quick to get through. I read it very quickly, and honestly, if any of this sounds interesting to you, I would very much recommend it for a fun, quick read. If you're somebody who likes a YA coming-of-age fantasy story, I do think it's really cute. I did rate it 3 stars because it didn't blow me away, but I also didn't have anything really negative to say about it. It was just kind of something that I enjoyed, but it's not going to stick with me moving forward. You know what I mean? But like I said before, there are merfolk in this book, so if you don't know what to comment, but you do want to support my channel, please go ahead and leave me a merman or a mermaid emoji in the comments, and I think that will really help send a message to YouTube that you still enjoy my videos even after I haven't posted for 3 weeks. Because burnout is real sometimes. But anyways, I made it, I got through this video, and I'm actually gonna post it finally. So thank you for being here and watching my videos, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!